guys, how's it going? Welcome to this week's recap video. I hope you've all had a really great week. We had a weird weather week where it kind of felt like a throwback to winter there
Yeah.
for a few days. And last night it got down to
24 maybe.
24, but the rest of our 10-day looks beautiful. Like highs in the high 30s and 40s, and we're going to get into the 70s one day. So it feels like we're kind of safe, maybe.
Yeah.
Always tricks us into feeling safe for the first little bit. But I am planning today to start planting more annuals out, some spring annuals, and
Nice.
just go for it. I'm so excited. We don't have any like special notes to talk about, so I'm just going to jump into the first video from this past week, which was planting Sergeant Pepper dogwoods out in the South Garden. And they're a brand new dogwood out, I think, this year. We got our hands on them last year, and I did plant one near the Dream Stream. And then I had 3 more that I was planning to plant out there. So we got that done. I cut back our hellebores, which we have quite the patch of hellebores. And it looks so much better. And they look so much happier, just like lifted when all that crummy growth is cleaned away from them. Also, while I was cleaning out the hellebores, my friend Beth brought a bunch of lamium so that I could finish planting the lamium under the golden rain tree. And it was funny because she had watched the video where I initially dug up our patch of lamium and I tried to spread it out as far as I could. And I made it like not even halfway. And she texted and said, "Hey, you gave me lamium a few years ago. I need to actually cut some of mine out because it's starting to get quite large. Do you want some of it back?" Sure. It was kind of fun.
Yeah.
So full circle.
Yeah.
Came back to the garden and I got that all planted. We also started a tray of stock seeds from the seed pods that I gathered, and most of them are up in the greenhouse. I started them out there and didn't even bring them in here to start under grow lights. So there's a few cells that I'm waiting on. I might pop more seeds in there. And then I think I gave some project updates. I can't remember which ones I gave updates on, but some. So there you go. Diane said, "What is the name of the beautiful crabapple tree that your and Aaron's grandfather has in his yard?" It's actually Aaron's dad. So the Indian Magic. It's beautiful. Your mom planted it there. Like, I don't even know how old it is at this point, but your dad sends me pictures from time to time, like in different seasons, about how glorious it is.
It's a good looking tree.
So pretty. So I had to have one out in our garden. Ours is not as mature because I just planted it last spring, I think, or maybe it was the fall before. I can't remember, but Indian Magic. And I think it grows, let's see, 15 by 15. Let me look it up really quick. Yeah, 15 by 15. It's a zone 4, but it has really bright pink flowers in the spring. I mean, just loads up. And then it gets beautiful, persistent red berries, which means they hang on the tree until the following spring, and then the new growth pushes them out. So typically they end up food for birds, and they never get to the point where they need to fall on the ground. So it's kind of the best of all things. Snow Falling said, is stock that spring plant you used to say your mom would buy for you every year and they smelled like cloves? Yes. I desperately want to find them, but can't remember what they were called. Yes, it's stock, and they do smell like cloves. They're just wonderful. And the Quartet Rainbow I've started 10, 12 different varieties of stock. Quartet Rainbow is the best variety I have started up to this point. And I think there are more Quartet varieties. Can't remember what they are, and maybe they behave the same way as the Quartet Rainbow, but it's like all colors of the sunset. They're so pretty. Maybe like on the pastel side of a sunset, though, like maybe like the tropical. I don't know. They're just gorgeous. Pinks, apricot. Pretty. Chris, our fan, said, "This seems to have been a great year for hellebores here in Virginia also. Mine are loaded with buds and flowers. I cleaned mine up and moved a couple, but I've heard they don't respond well to moving. Is this true?" I've heard the same thing. If you need to move them, move them. Most of the time, everything's fine. As long as you get a decent sized root ball and you keep them moist. I'm going to have to move a lot of mine. And I'm thinking they will end up in the front area, like the ash tree and kind of like the new area we're going to create where the crabapple is. We'll have a lot more planting area up there in a shady spot. And now that we don't have the honey locust for sure over top of where they currently are, and we plan to remove the lilac as well, then they will not have the protection they need anymore. So anyway, I'm going to move mine. And we'll just hope for the best. Lorem said, "Do you ever plant native and drought-resistant trees, shrubs, and other plants?" Yes. Mixed in there. Yes.
Well, anytime we plant like a juniper or,
Yeah.
things like that.
Yeah. Russian sage,
Yeah.
Caryopteris. There's a lot of things out there that can handle quite a lot.
We have to be careful with the drip irrigation to like try to make sure to not give those the same amount of water that other things
Yeah.
are getting.
Really, all evergreens that we plant here.
Yeah.
Even though it's hot and dry here, they still don't want a ton of water. Donna Braden said, I haven't heard her say it or I've forgotten, but can someone tell me why Laura isn't using her auger right now? These last few days she's been using a shovel. Absolutely no reason. I don't know. I think maybe it's just the scale of the job, but like my health is fine, all of those things. I just grab whatever. I don't know. There was absolutely no thought behind that. Although augers do make quite a large mess, and I know we're like a ways away from being able to mulch things, and I don't really want to look at a mess. So I can gently scoot the mulch away from the area I need to dig a hole, and then I can dig a hole with the shovel, and it's a lot easier to make it look tidy in the end. But once we start scaling up our projects, which we will here very soon, because I'm going to start all the annual planting, I will be bringing out the auger for sure. AD said, looks great. Still wondering about that golden rain tree though. Do we think that it was like the mulberry with a raised bed added on later? I hope not.
I think to a certain extent it was.
Do you think so?
Yeah.
I've tried to pull soil away from the base of that tree just to investigate, and it doesn't move like it did on the mulberry.
Yeah.
Like the mulberry, and it could be just a different type of root system, but the mulberry was definitely added onto, and we could just easily move that soil away. Like it hadn't sent roots up into that bed, but the golden rain tree has filled the bed around it with roots, and it's incredibly hard to dig. I was thankful that the lamium is so shallow rooted because I was having a heck of a time, and I thought, this is perfect. We can stop disrupting all these roots here. We can get the lamium hopefully to take, and we just leave it alone. Okay, Aaron stepped out for just a second. He had to go take care of something, so I'm just going to answer a few more of these until he gets back. Shirley said, garden stores here in southern Ohio, 6B, always tell me dogwood shrubs need sun protection. Yours all seem to be in bright, hot sun. What gives? Well, there's a couple of different types of dogwood. So the dogwood shrubs that we plant, like the Arctic Fire Yellow, the Sergeant Pepper, all of those require or prefer full sun, so 6 to 8 hours plus of sun. Dogwood trees, however, dogwood trees are understory trees in our area, at least, and they do need some protection from the hot afternoon sun. Otherwise, they scorch. That's why I don't have any. I mean, I've got a June snow dogwood, which is slightly more sun tolerant than others, and I'm going to plant the dogwood, the Cornelian cherry that I just picked up in a sunny spot, so we'll see how that goes. But typically the dogwood trees are the ones here, at least, that need sun protection. Vicky said, have you tried the apple cider vinegar in a jar method for killing gnats? Gnats works so much better than what you're doing. Well, I don't know if it's going to work as good as the neem, because the neem is taking care of business. I don't know why I haven't done that up to this point, but I've just been spraying neem directly on the soil around all of my seedlings in here, and I'm having such good results from that. It's incredible. I think I would rather do that than have to figure out spots to put apple cider vinegar in a jar. I could definitely try it, but I'm really happy with the results of the neem thus far. Bloom Where You're Planted said, what would happen if you didn't cut back the hellebores? Would the old growth die off, or would it still stay green with the new growth popping out? Thinking of adding it to my garden. P.S. You look great in that blue. Thank you. I've been going through the depths of my closet. Maybe you've noticed. I haven't bought any new clothes lately, but I'm just wearing some of the existing ones I have. And I thought, you know what? I'm going to wear all of these one time, see if they're comfortable, if they're long enough to where I can bend over when I garden, and all of those things. And I'll keep the ones that I feel comfortable in still at the end of the day. And I'm going to donate the ones that I don't feel comfortable in at the end of the day. And thus weed out my closet systematically. Back. Aaron's back. And if you didn't cut your hellebores back, they would still stay there. They're pretty ratty looking, the last year's leaves. Now, I'm speaking from somebody at the lower end of the growing zone for hellebores. I think they're like a 5 to 8 or 5 to 9, and we are a 6. So in colder climates, they get a little bit more wear and tear in the winter, and they just don't look that great. But they're such a thick leaf that I think it would take a long time for them to die off and like go away. I mean, I've never tested that theory. I just think that keeping those leaves on the plants makes the plant look bad. And I think I would be distracted. I mean, it's still pop up new growth, blooms and green leaves, depending on how thick the old growth is, though. Sometimes the old growth will stay in a nice dome and it's a lot harder for the new growth to pop through. And sometimes it just lays flat and then the new growth comes up from the center. But either way, I think it would distract me seeing all that old ratty foliage with the new stuff there. So for me, cutting it away, it's a once a year job, not hard. It's like easy to distinguish the new from the old in that situation. So I prefer cutting the old leaves off. This is Texas Gardening said, blue is your color. Thank you. What kind of grass was that you mentioned while planting the dogwoods? Oh, the Pennisetum desert plains. They are pretty. In fact, my dad which my dad usually, like, if he notices a plant that hits him, like it's something,
Yeah.
and he has always loved those grasses, like the way that they're structured. And he's been telling my mom, we need to find a spot for some of those
Yeah.
grasses. And my mom is softening to the idea of ornamental grasses as well. Like
Yeah, she doesn't plant a lot of them,
a
does
couple
she?
years ago, you would not find a single one, but the blonde ambition is wearing her down. And I gave her a bunch of starts of what I started in the winter sowing method last year, because out of one water jug, I ended up with 60 plants, 60 perennial grass plants. And so I gave her, I don't even remember how many, 18 or 20 of them. And she planted them in one of her beds. And I'm excited to see what she thinks of them. Rubu said, we have a couple of days coming up that are going back down to 29 to 32 degrees, but I've already cut back roses and hydrangeas. Should I cover them? Nope, they'll be totally fine. Now, if it was going to get, like if you just cut them and then you had a 0-degree night, that you might consider it. Okay, next video is planting 7 new trees and the sweetest violas. So Aaron and I got out and planted the 5 bald and burlapped spring grove arborvitaes on the berm behind our barn. And then we planted the strawberry moon chatalpa and the autumn blaze maple out in the dirtlands. And then when we were done with that, I planted some violas in the little urns behind the Hartley. It was just a nice day. It was a great day. Wendy said, I thought you said you remove the wire baskets from trees when you plant them. The autumn blaze maple still had the basket on. Does it depend on the tree and the spreading of the roots? Now, in this video, I did remove the basket from every single one, and editing can kind of sometimes cut that stuff out and it might not look like it was removed, but it was. But I do know along the lane, when you and Paul and Bethany were planting those autumn blaze, the root balls were wanting to fall apart a little bit. So you cut the bottom off, right? You cut the side, set the root ball down, and then cut out whatever you could, but you left a little little fragments on.
Yeah.
But I think the most important thing is that it's cut somewhere so that the roots can expand and it like push it away.
Sure.
But we do try to remove it on every tree. Mary said 2 questions. Do you use gravel for ground cover in flower garden or mulch? Mulch. Well, we use a compost as a mulch. The only places we use gravel in, the only place it's around plants is around the lavender in front of the raised bed garden, because it's like part of our driveway.
Also, the boxwoods that we planted in the parking area.
In the parking area. Oh, yeah, that's right. I forgot about those.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that was just because there was already gravel. We just raked the gravel away, planted, and
Right.
then put the gravel back.
We use compost as a mulch in our flower beds largely. How do you control Bermuda grass from taking over garden when all neighbors have it? Oh boy, you don't. unless your neighbors will take care of the problem. It's a spray like once a week for, I mean, you have to spray it a lot often. And if you don't have cooperation from your neighbors, it'll be a battle forever. Because you can spray what comes onto your side, but it'll continue wanting to come through. I remember when we moved in next to your parents, there was one patch that had Bermuda grass on your parents' side, and it kept coming under our fence. And I think your mom ended up just digging, like she just dug that area out.
Oh, really?
Like eradicated all the roots she could find. Because she was like, I don't want to spray it every week for however long, So she just took after that spot and ended up making a flower bed there. I think there's raspberries and stuff planted in that space now. Linda said, have you given any more consideration to adding boulders to your flower beds so they blend with the dream stream? We've talked about it a little bit, and we'll probably add some here and there. Yeah, that project definitely softened me on the whole boulder thing. I love that area. You guys, we are doing a pond clean out next week. It's bad. It's like last year. Like, I mean,
You know what? Maybe worse.
maybe worse. So we expected it because when you drain your pond and add a whole big section, it's like you're starting back at square one almost.
Yeah, so I've been talking to Greg and Chris Schreiner, and Greg thinks that fertilizer got in the pond, which I don't agree with because
I don't think
we
so
haven't
either.
fertilized since last spring.
Last spring, and then the only fertilizer that went in around that area was directly in the holes that we were planting in. So there was nothing on the top like to slough off, but there's compost.
There is compost, yeah, and so I think Chris kind of thinks that it's probably water runoff.
Yeah.
It's gone through the compost and picking up that kind of stuff.
Too many
So,
nutrients.
Yeah, too many nutrients. So I'm not too worried about it. We'll drain it and clean it out. And then we're going to hit it hard with the SAB, the string algae buster. And then all the other stuff like the maintenance and clean and all that.
And you did a really good job keeping on it last year because after the clean out last spring, it looked beautiful the rest of the season.
Yeah.
Like we never had a bloom of algae. It was gorgeous.
Yeah. So the string algae buster, I think you have to use it like when it in the beginning, you like use it twice in the first week and then you do a weekly application for a while. And And then after a while, the heat kind of takes over,
Yeah.
and the fish are eating on the algae, and I'm not worried about it at all. I think,
No.
the clean out's going to happen tomorrow, which we'll film it, and then the video won't come out for maybe like 2 more days.
Yeah.
And then after that, I think it'll be fine.
Yeah, I'm excited to see it clean. And I'm excited, one, it'll be clean, and two, we've got a greenhouse full of plants that, remember that first load of perennials that I got in January? I got most of them to plant around that area, and I've just been hanging on to them, and they look so pretty. I actually think now that we're past this like more intense freezing, I'm going to put them on tables and wheel them out to the high tunnel so they can harden off just a little bit and live out there for a week or so, and thus they will be strong enough to go straight out into the garden. Ellen said, last year I bought a hose reel that you have to crank. I should have bought one that automatically winds up hose. What brand do you recommend? Hose Link, for sure. We've tried, like, is it Vigo?
Vigo has one that is longer. So if you need a longer hose, there's just no other option.
And it works fine, except for the hose. If it's longer, it is smaller diameter, and you need to look out when they reel in. Like, it could.
Yeah, they reel in like
so fast,
a little too quickly.
Yeah,
like the spring is
supercharged.
Too springy. And then also one thing that other ones do that Hose Link doesn't is that they'll kink right at the hose. Like, so if you put a water wand on it, it'll kink. The hose part will kink as you're trying to water things, because it's like there's not enough rigidity in the hose. Like it's too. It almost feels like what's the stuff that you use in the flower garden? The drip tape.
Oh yeah.
You know how like if you were to hold drip tape, it just bends. It just bends.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Hose Link is wonderful, and Hose Link's got 82 feet of hose, and I can't remember, is it half inch?
I think it's a proprietary.
I don't know exactly what diameter, but it's plenty. Like, we've got a lot of Hose Links I showed you in the red barn.
I think we have like 25 to 30.
Yeah, we've got a lot. I mean, they're a game changer for sure. Terry said, do you treat for bagworms, or are they not an issue? They're normally not an issue for us. The only time I've had bagworms was the first time we had the pond installed and the team was here, and Franco was like, hey, you got bagworms in one of your crab apples? I'm like, what? So I stopped right away. I'm like, all right, I got to go handle this. So I just mixed up some BT or Thuricide in a pump sprayer, and I just sprayed them, and that was it. And BT is awesome because it's a selective worm, caterpillar killer. They have to ingest it and it kills them, but it doesn't affect anything else. So it's good. We use it for, what are they called? Budworms, specifically on supertunias and superbells and geraniums. Kim said, are you going to get any of those trees from that man's farm before they take it down? I think about that place all the time, and I don't even know whose it is. You've probably seen it by now, but we did decide to get 6 more trees, and they are wonderful. They're beautiful. They're still expensive though. So like we've sat and talked, like, is there any other key spots we want to put trees? Well, there's a lot of spots we could put trees, but there's also a lot of projects in the lineup that we want to be able to budget for as well. So we decided probably 6 is where we're going to stop for now. And then we might revisit in the fall, if there's anything we decide to do. I don't know. I'm real happy with the ones we got though.
Yeah.
And they did tip the one. So there was a blue spruce they put in, and it wasn't their fault at all, because when they go in and dig, they're digging straight down around the tree, but these trees are growing on a hillside. So when they dig down, it's like kind of digging them at an angle, and then they put it in and it's like, and he even said when he came back, he's like, oh, I don't know how I didn't notice that. He's like, we can fix that. So, and it's wonky anyway, because it's growing, it's not growing straight up and down on a flat piece of ground. So it's still like, I think the trunk is straight now, but the tree is definitely bigger on one side than it is on the other, and it won't matter in the end. We'll have a bunch of stuff around it, but it looks really good now. Donna said, do you guys ever get hail in your area? I always wonder that when I see your glass greenhouse. That would be horrendous. We do get hail. It doesn't affect the Hartley whatsoever. I mean, we're not getting like big hail.
Yeah,
but like quarter-inch.
We don't get hail big enough to like dent cars generally.
We did. I don't remember what year that was when we did the groupies tour here. And 2 weeks before the tour, we had a huge storm come through.
Didn't it hail the day of as well?
Oh, I think it did.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it was raining real hard.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it just ruined perennials in the garden. And I was just, do you remember? I was like, I couldn't even really speak.
Yeah.
I was wanting to cry. And anyway, it was fine. People understand, but like hostas were ruined. Lamb's ear was ruined. And it just, It was sad.
Yeah.
It was a sad day. Gary said, why don't you ever plant Leyland cypress evergreen trees for your borders? We did. There's 2 out there. We've got 3. They're a short-lived tree, though, so we're going to go light on those.
Yeah, from everything we've read online, it says they're a short-lived tree. Your parents have some that are over 30 years old now.
Are they over 30 now?
Well, how old were you when you moved into that house?
6.
You guys planted them like right away?
No.
No?
No. Like the ones around the swimming pool? You talking those?
Well, they've got them everywhere.
The ones they probably planted the earliest would be the ones on top of like where you go down into the orchard. They kind of
Okay.
go over that. That was probably like, I'll give you like 95 for that. So
30 years?
30 years.
Yeah.
Yeah. The other ones like around the pool were way later. I was a junior in high school.
Okay.
So those are probably like 20-ish years.
Well, yeah. Online, it says that they live between like 25 and 30 years. So I don't know if they're about to come down or if they'll just keep on
They
trucking.
still look good. But yeah, when you read that, you kind of are like, "Oh, I don't want to make my whole hedge out of those because I don't want, something to
Yeah.
take them out. Allison said, do you ever hand water your arborvitae in the winter when the drip is turned off? Some years we have lots of rain or snow on the ground until spring, so I don't worry about supplemental water, and some years not so much.
Yeah. It depends on the year.
We
like
didn't
this
this
last
year.
year. No.
So much moisture. And last year before,
It's
we
been
didn't
really
either.
nice. The last several years, our reservoirs have just been like brimming. I mean, they're letting water out, which I hate. It's like
know.
make the reservoir bigger or build another reservoir because you have all this water, and people like to complain about it. There not being enough water, but there is. If people would just do something about it. So anyway, rant for the day.
Should we open that can of worms, Erin? Mary said, does a Chitalpa produce those messy seed pods? It says, so Chitalpa is a hybrid between a catalpa and a desert willow. So it says that the seed set is drastically reduced. So we'll have to see what happens. They do usually call them the bean tree. They set those beans, the catalpas themselves do. So hopefully I don't really care. It's out there. It doesn't matter. We can drop on the ground and make a mess. And that's the beauty of that area.
Catalpas are good shade trees from that perspective.
Thick shade trees.
Yeah, really big leaves, and I think they grow pretty well around here.
Yeah, they do. They're not really bothered by anything.
No.
Yeah. Next video was installing 3 huge evergreens, pruning and planting tree roses in a pretty spring container. So I started off in the greenhouse that day, putting together a spring arrangement for Bethany's kids' school auction. And it ended up going for like double or a little bit more than double its retail value, which was awesome. It went for $575. Yeah, it was fun. I love to go down to the garden center when I'm picking out a pot for somebody else because I kind of know what sells the best down at Andrew's. Ceramic, like glazed pottery is huge. And I don't work with it very often because I don't personally love it. In very small doses, I like it. But I just thought that green pot was so pretty. And it was fun to put that together and like send it out the door. So we did that. And then we pruned the Julia Child tree roses that are on the west side of the Hartley. And then we planted 2 more on the east side of the Hartley. And while we were doing this, there were trees that were being installed, which is always exciting when I can hear the machines working and I'm working away on something. And yeah. We got a beautiful, great big Austrian pine, the blue spruce, and a beautiful green spruce. The green spruces are some of my favorites that we have out there. Yeah, I just think they're so pretty. Okay, Famished Farm said, what a great auction price for someone. After that, about 10:30, the metal benches beside the Hartley, are they rockers? Where did you get those? They are rockers. I got them at my parents' garden center. You could email them or call if you are interested in something like that, because I don't know what brand they are. I mean, I've had them for a couple years.
Or send me an offer. I'd love to ship them
hush,
off to you.
Hush your mouth, Erin. They do have rockers down there right now. And they've got these really cool, they're like on A-frame, like a little swinging bench. And I thought, oh, that would be really sweet to put somewhere. Where could we put something like that, Erin? Like out by the court area?
Yeah, maybe.
Like in the shade where somebody could sit and kind of swing while they
Yeah.
watch the kids. I think that would be really fun. Silver Fox said, your tree roses, are they grandiflora or floribunda? I believe Julia Child's are a floribunda. Let me see. Floribunda, let's see. Yep, it's a floribunda rose. Oh, I always love it when I actually remember something right. Okay, Susan said, how long does it take for those big trees to root in? Beautiful arrangement. I hope it goes for more than last year's donation, which I think it did. I think last year's was like around 500 and this year's was a little bit more.
Yeah.
I think this one's a little bit bigger, though. So I think it's kind of relative. How long does it take for those big trees to root in? They have us keep the stakes on for, what, a year, Erin? Or the ropes?
He was saying 1 to 2 years.
Okay.
So I don't know. how long we'll keep them. I don't know. With evergreens, it's really hard to tell if they're like really loving it, if they're rooted in or not.
Right. A lot of times they will show you they're mad like in a second and then
Yeah.
they're dead. Yeah.
It's like, yeah, they're good until they're not.
Right. Stephanie said, I have a blueberry bush. I have no clue what type it is, about 10 years old and does produce berries, but it isn't getting bushy and it's actually quite long stems. I want to prune it, but I don't want to kill it. Can you give me an idea of when to cut it back and how far down I should cut it? Well, I did a video on it. So if you look up Garden Answer blueberry pruning, you will find it. Then I went through all the different methods. I could go over it now, but I think watching the video would be a little bit more helpful because I actually did it to my own blueberries. Michelle said, why didn't you put biotone in the hole when you planted the rose trees? You put in hollytone. I did because we are currently out of biotone. It's on its way. So I just put a tone in there because there is some of that in there as well. So I'm just using what we have on hand until we get biotone back in. Lynn said, will the tree roses always have to be staked, or will there be a time frame when the stakes can be removed after they meet certain criteria? I am hopeful that those ropes can be removed after a little while, but if you look at the size of the canopy versus the size of the trunk at the moment, trunk is pretty small. So that means that the ones that we planted that day, the new ones, we haven't staked those yet, but I will, once I start putting on growth, I will need to have those staked. They are on the east side of the Hartley, so they will be more protected. The Hartley will break the wind, but the ones on the west side get nailed. So I'm hoping, though, once they're in the ground for a few years and have a bigger trunk on them, that we could remove those ropes. This Grandma Loves Jesus said, hello, Laura. Thank you for introducing me to hellebores. Where have they been all my life? I know they're so pretty. Question, I just purchased one, and when I went to plant it, the roots were so big and tight around the plant. I did loosen them before planting, but should I have done this? So we just talked about how hellebores do not like to have their roots disturbed. But when they are that root bound, typically I'll cut them at the bottom just a little bit just to kind of help break up that circular growth habit. And that's about it. You're probably fine. Just keep them well watered and they'll probably be just fine. Probably. Did I just say probably as it was coming out of my mouth? I'm like, oh, geez. All right. Belle said, do you worry that you are overcapitalizing your property with all the big expensive trees you're planting? No, we love it. We love trees and it's worth the investment to us. Whether or not, like, there's a certain moment where you have to decide, like, I don't know. I don't want to base my decisions on what we plant on the value of our home.
Yeah.
You know.
Is she saying, like, you wouldn't be able to get the money back out of it if you were to sell?
So. Yeah. We've had that conversation before.
Yeah.
But then we just decided, like, we're in it to win it here. You know, unless some opportunity came around and we were able to, I mean, I think that you would want to move out of our current town if you had a good opportunity to do so.
But I don't think that's going to happen as well.
No, and I'm totally content here. I love it here. The kids love their home. And yeah, so.
I really like living here in the spring and the fall. I get tired after the winter. And I think probably a lot of people can relate to that live in colder climates.
Yeah.
Where, you know, you're just like, oh, you can't get outside and do things because it's so cold.
Yeah.
I'm sure that's a relatable thing.
Oh, yeah.
To a lot of people.
January and February are the pits. And I mean, not for me as much for you because I love to be in the greenhouse and that's wonderful. So we've made it a point to try to go somewhere warm. And that's going to be something we try to do going forward. And you can get kind of fill your cut back up with some warmth. And then in the summertime, the heat for me, I like the beginning of summer and the end of summer, but that like July and August, the dog days.
Yeah.
My word.
We should go somewhere cool in August.
In August.
Somewhere warm in January.
Yeah. Then maybe we'll be able to get through.
Yeah.
Next video was planting 4 royal frost birch trees. So we did a trio near the formal flower garden, and then we did a single over by the grape area. And then I pruned some hydrangeas and roses near the kitchen area. So we did the hedge of incredible hydrangeas. And then there were a few roses in that area. And then I planted up 3 containers for spring. And they look so happy, and I love them over there. Becky said, all the years of watching and learning from you, I'm still amazed that you can plant pansies and violets while still cold and chances of more frost. My favorite flowers. Mine die. What do I need to do? Well, it kind of depends on how they were grown. You know, some people grow them cold to where they're not like in a heated greenhouse, in which case the plants are way more tough and acclimated to go outside. So knowing that piece of information can be helpful. Also, like when I very first planted up the violas around the Hartley, I did cover them for several nights. I covered them so that I made sure they were acclimated because I had the pansies in our greenhouse, which is heated. And so I wanted to make sure that they didn't perish. And then also I covered mine on a couple of really windy days because that can take it out of them too. So I think that was helpful. Now I can leave them uncovered. Like last night it got down to 24. I did not cover mine and they're fine. The pansies that I picked up yesterday, and they are in a high tunnel right now, just because I knew we were going to get down to 24, and I'm not sure it's a new grower and I'm not sure how they grow them. So I thought, let's just protect them tonight and then I can start planting out because we don't have any more freezing. So I think just gauging that and then tossing some frost protection cloth over them if you feel like it might get a little too cold can be helpful. Also, what is the beautiful burgundy purplish plant growing under the rose bushes? I'm trying to think of what I have over there. I've got some heuchera. And I've got some like lamium, and there is a smoke bush in the area, but that doesn't have leaves on it yet. So I'm thinking maybe it was the heuchera you were seeing. I'll have to go out there and look. Margot said, how will they get pollinated inside? Oh, I think I started that video in the high tunnel showing the dwarf fruit trees. We used to have pollinators out already, and they get in there and they find it. And we will, starting today, have the doors open because it's not going to freeze and freeze their blooms off. So even more pollinators will find them. In fact, when I was out spraying in the orchard, there were a couple of bees flying around already. And so I moved on to like the next tree, make sure, I don't know, I mean like one bee, but bless its heart, it was out there and like trying to find food. And so anyway, they're out and about. And it's not just bees. I mean, there's flies and all kinds of stuff that will pollinate as well. Paula said, love the new trees. Do you need to do anything to prepare the dream stream for the spring? Well, clean it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is. Like it just boomed.
Yeah.
It's crazy because it looked pretty good all winter. There was some string algae and I knew we were going to need to clean it. But then all of a sudden, like, yeah. Angie said, a new gardener in Ohio, question, when pruning roses or trees, is there a certain temperature you should not prune for the safety of the plant? Not really. If you're in the depths of winter and want to go do some pruning, you can do that. The tree is out there already. It's acclimated to the cold. And winter pruning, like late winter pruning, is a really good thing to do for most trees because you can really see the shape of them. And then pruning selectively in the summertime is also okay. The rule of thumb is not to take more than 20% of the tree during the growing season when it's warm out. And that way it doesn't kind of like shock your tree. But there's really not a temperature I'd say don't prune. Some people will say don't for roses and such, like wait until later on, like really late winter or early spring when it starts to warm up a little bit. And I kind of just do it whenever it works out. Birds and Bloom said, hi, I noticed your Japanese maple looks like mine when you did the sweet planting of the trio pots. I thought I have killed my new Japanese maple. When does yours begin to leaf out? Well, you'll be able to tell if it's dead or not. Because you should, like for us, I can see the buds. The branches are still really flexible. The tree is going to be beautiful, I think, again this year. So you might just go out and check yours a little bit and see if you've got any of those buds swelling on the branches. Oftentimes you can tell if a branch is dead too. It'll look a lot more dry and like puckered. The wood will look puckered and like more of a light color. Bobby said, do you ever forget where you cut out the drip system until spring startup? Or does Paul come later and repair the line? Oh, we forget. But when I cut the drip out around the birch tree, I actually took both ends and kinked them and then popped a landscape staple down over the kink into the ground. So, I mean, it might not be enough. It might be too much pressure and it might just pop them open. But I did kink those and they're up above the ground so you can see where I made the cuts. And
it doesn't really matter so much because Paul and I go through every year and we turn on each zone, of which we have many, and we just check. We check every single zone and fix, anything that needs to be. You turn on for a second, you hear water running, you're like, turn it off, and go find where there's a wet spot and fix it. Right.
Laura said, hello, love your channel, your family, and the cats. Question, in pruning diseased roses, do you clean your pruners in between plants or cuts? You should, for sure. If you are cutting into whatever you think might be diseased, you should technically clean the pruners between every cut. I cut out that one branch in the lemon zest, and that was the only branch I saw that looked like that. So, and I didn't even talk about cleaning. I should have. I forget stuff like that sometimes. Darla said, I have a serviceberry bush that a friend gave me. Do I need to prune it? It's a multiple trunk. Is it okay that the trunks cross? It depends on how bad the trunks are crossing. Like, are they crossing to where like there's space between, or are they rubbing on each other? And if it's like a main trunk that one's rubbing on the other, you should pull the one back and stake it down so that they're not rubbing on one another. If it's just like littler branches that are rubbing on one another, I try to cut out selective ones so that each branch has room around it. Largely, those service berries don't need to be pruned. So, I mean, it's just pruning to correct issues, basically. Sarah said, love starting my day with your videos. I was wondering what is growing on the trellis behind your outdoor table. Also, did you prune it? I looked at that day and I thought, oh, I wish I had time to take that down. I think my parents were coming over for dinner.
Oh,
And my brother and sister-in-law and their kids, they were all coming over for dinner that night. And I was like cutting it close to get projects done and to set up for dinner. And so I was looking at that thinking, oh, they're the pink mink clematis and they're beautiful and they're a good grower. I mean, they always load up with flowers every single year, and they make it to the top of the trellis every year because we cut them down to 18 inches about above the ground every single spring. Donna said, hello, if the birch tree grows 25 feet across, why are they planted so close together? When they mature, will the internal branches not die? New to tree planting. It's weird when you plant multi-trunk trees, you just kind of let them do their thing for the most part, unless the main trunks are rubbing on one another. And like I said, if you want to, if like something really egregious is going on in there, you can get in there and selectively cut and kind of lighten the load in the center. But trees planted close together kind of speak to one another and kind of grow how they should. Because they know that they're in close proximity. It's kind of what they do out in nature. You can get a lot of trees already planted together in like a single pot. Like the Renaissance reflection birch that I saw down at the garden center had like 5 or 6 trunks in this tiny little thing. So all of those will grow together, all individual trees, and they'll all grow together in a clump. I was looking at our like, very tidy and precise trio out there. I thought we could have gone maybe a little closer together with it. But I think in the end, having it once the trunks are nice and big, having them a little bit far apart will be nice. And I took a long time with that trio.
yeah, you did.
Because that spot has bothered me so much because it's not a balanced spot, right? So one side goes out way longer and it's way thicker when you move off from kind of like the center point where the grass goes to a point in the back. And so when I initially had planted a blue spruce in that area, I planted it off to the side because visually it looked like it balanced the space better to have it off to the side a bit because it took up more of that thick spot. But it always bothered me that it never lined up with the grass point right there. Anyway, so I just was determined not to get this one wrong because I did not want to have to move these trees.
Yeah.
And so I was back and forth for like 20 minutes.
Yeah. The worst part was you wanting my opinion.
Well, I'm like, just have a thought, have an opinion about these trees because I feel like I don't want it to, I don't know. I just needed that validation that it was right. And then finally I just thought, you know what? I just got to go with it here. Yeah. And it looks really good. It looks good from the angles that it needs to look good from. It's centered in that space and all of it won't matter anyway in the end because we're going to plant up that space anyway. So, next video is the garden center tour with my mom. I went down there because they've had so much activity. In fact, you guys, like between when we filmed this video and right now, they have received so many more plants. I don't even know how they are moving around in there. In fact, one of the loads had our boxwoods for the front flower bed that we've planned this winter. I'm so excited about it, but it is just nuts down there. And I just thought we should go down and just kind of look at everything. They just received their load of vines and oh, it was just so pretty. Teresa said, my geese got out and ate 90% of the bark off my husband's dwarf apple trees. Will they die? Do I need to order him more? I didn't know geese did that. If they girdled the tree, which is removing all the bark all the way around, that's how nutrients and moisture moves up your tree and it could most likely kill them. Most likely, I don't know. I mean, you could wait to see what happens this year, but 90% of the bark off. That's a bummer. And here I was thinking I could keep geese in our orchard. Nope.
No.
Kate said, are there any Rosa Sharons that can be grown in containers? I think you could try to grow any Rosa Sharon in a container because they bloom on new wood. So you can keep them pruned down to whatever size you need them to stay. I mean, I wouldn't go with a real little container. And there are some Rosa Sharons that stay more pillar shaped and stay a little bit smaller. So depending on what variety you pick, that would be a fun experiment to try. That would be a nice one. And I would think an easy keeper in a container. Chicks USA said, any way of doing an overhead drone shot of Andrew's seeds? Sometimes it seems like huge and then other times not so big. If I ever go to Oregon, I would make a point to visit. What a fun destination. They make use of every last square inch of space down there. And it's not overly huge. It's a city block.
Yeah, I've tried to get overhead shots of Andrews. It's a really tough place to get an overhead shot of because you won't find any points of reference. Mm-hmm. When you look down on it, it just looks like it could be anything else because they have some trees out in the nursery. And so you don't really see a lot because the canopy sort of kind of covers a lot of areas. I mean, you can kind of pick out a little bit, but it doesn't look great. Not that it doesn't look great. doesn't look interesting at all
Yeah.
from above.
And there's a lot of buildings too. Like that whole city block is not just the nursery portion. The nursery portion just takes up a little bit of that city block, but there's like the main store area, there's part of the seed plant, there's warehouses, there's the sandwich shop on the corner, which my parents own the building. And so like it's like good size. I think Andrews covers like almost 3 city blocks, but the nursery portion is probably, what do you think of that one? Maybe like just under like a third maybe of the city block is the plant portion, maybe a half.
Yeah, it's pretty small.
Yeah, but they pack it in. They really do a good job. Kathy said, oh, how I wish we had a garden center like your mom and dad's. Of course, if we did have one, I would be broke. I've been running into the same gal. Remember Rosa at the college who took care of the plants? We run into each other every time I'm down there lately. And I'm like, we need to quit meeting like this because it means we're both spending a bunch of money, which is very true. But she was there yesterday getting some hibiscus. The time before she was getting some roses. It was just really fun. What did Aaron say when you got more hellebores? I got those 3, remember?
Yeah.
For the container.
What did I say? Just
Nothing.
yeah.
He's used to it now. Gardening Grandma said, wonderful tour of the garden center. Laura, do you know the greenhouse brand that your mom uses? It looks like a compact functional size that is sturdy. I want to say, because there was a time when my parents were able to order like kind of wholesale-ish through Gardener Supply. And I think they ordered these. There's 2 of them. I think they ordered them through Gardener Supply. And I don't know that they do that anymore. They might. And I don't know what brand they are, but they are quite nice. I'm so surprised the hellebores are coming from Canada. I rarely see them in Calgary. They must come from British Columbia. Do you know? Oh, geez, I don't know. But all the vines and those huge hellebores came from a grower in Canada, and they are absolutely gorgeous. Like absolutely gorgeous. Aunt Becky said, do you ever get fruit from your black lace elderberries? Yes, we do. The birds eat it. So I don't go out and harvest it, but they create the most beautiful discs of like light white to light pink flowers that are followed by black berries, which you kind of have to look because the berries kind of are the same color as the foliage. So you don't really see them stand out contrast wise, but they do create them. Brittany said, how many people are working at Andrew Seed this time of year? Thank you for sharing your business space and taking time out of this busy season to spread the excitement of the upcoming growing season. Let me make a count real quick. I'll include my parents in this because yeah. I want to say between 15 and 20 people this time of year, right around in there. I think they could use one more guy, some lifting power down there.
Yeah.
The gals down there.
Can't say that.
Pretty strong. Why?
Can't say it needs to be a guy. Women can do it too.
I was just going to say the gals down there are very strong and they try their best, but there's some things we just can't or shouldn't be lifting.
Sure.
They need another guy down there. I think that would be very handy, especially this time of year. Okay, the last group of questions come from last week's recap video. Tully said, I'm from West Central Minnesota, and we can rent goats to clean out areas, specifically buckthorn and other noxious weeds. Maybe you can rent pigs in Oregon.
Yeah, maybe. I've seen that. I've
Have
seen
you?
it online, yeah.
Rent a pig?
I've not rent a pig, but I've seen rent a goat.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, that might be a thing to think about.
Yeah.
Rena said, have you tried HoseLink solar lights? Love watching your channel. We have not.
Rena must work for HoseLink. They've been trying to get us to use the solar lights.
Oh, yeah. Sandy said, what kind of oil do you fry your hand pies in?
The best kind?
The best kind. Tallow. I don't want to share things because I don't want to be judged. They were excellent hand pies. Carol said, that John Deere tractor, I remember when you got your white Bobcat that Aaron said your John Deere was up for sale. What happened with that?
That's a different tractor. So we have gators, we have a lawnmower, and then we have like a John Deere tractor. It's like a 2 series or 2000 series.
So we had a 4 series though, right?
Yeah.
We kind of like traded it in for
and went down to a 2 series because we didn't want something that was quite that big because the Bobcat does the big stuff. And then the 2 series does like the middle ground things. Mm-hmm. And then the lawnmower is just a lawnmower because I keep the bagger on it. And it's a huge pain in the butt. Lawnmower wouldn't do a great job at the things that the 2 series John Deere does. Mm-hmm. And you can get certain tractors that like can mow, but also can do some of like the other tractor things. But you're like really giving up things on both sides because it's like if you get something that can do everything, it sort of does everything mediocre. And that's kind of a pain.
Sure.
That's the one thing about buying equipment and having equipment on a farm is that the there's just no way to find the one thing that does
unicorn.
everything. There's no unicorn.
Yeah.
You know, so.
Dang.
Yeah.
Tana Jones said, one of the comments mentioned a podcast. Do you have a podcast? Am I missing it? I hope not. We do not have a podcast. I think they refer to this as a podcast because we're chatting, but that's really not the style of most of our videos. Most of our videos are just showing you what we're doing that day in the garden. I don't know if I would. There's some times where I think I would enjoy a podcast, but I don't think I'm social enough for that.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I can talk a lot if I'm talking with Aaron, or, you know, I talk with you guys a lot in videos, but just to sit down and have...
I think you'd be good at it. You just need to get over that initial, like, I think because you're good at conversing with people. You're good at asking questions.
It's a social anxiety for me.
Maybe that's what it is. I think you'd actually be really good at it. The problem with the gardening podcast is that there aren't enough, like, known people in the gardening space to keep a gardening only podcast going.
I don't think that's true.
Oh, it's totally true. It's totally true. There's not enough people.
So many people.
Not enough known people. The problem is if you have a podcast where your guest week after week after week is an unknown person to the majority of your following, I think people will drop off.
I don't think so. I think if the subject matter was interesting enough or helpful enough, I don't know that it would matter, would it? I mean, it's all a learning thing, right?
I don't think it is. I think most people watch podcasts for entertainment and not for learning.
Gotcha.
I could be wrong about that, but I think most of it is entertainment.
Journal to Awakening said, okay, Aaron, how about you do a few online classes, charge a reasonable fee, and we'll sign up. Like a drip class.
I would not feel good about charging money for that because I feel like my advice would be worth
that is
free.
Not true.
No, I think it'd be like I'd feel much better about it being online free because then like it wouldn't be 100%. It would just be my experience with drip and it'd be like a take it or leave it situation.
If nothing else, I think if you filmed a video about drip, just a video about drip, trying to hit some of the high points.
Yeah.
And stuff, I think that would be really helpful. And I think that because you're so organized about stuff, I think that you could like bullet point.
Yeah.
And you could move pretty quickly.
It almost would need to be like based on the parts that you need. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Like you just show what something looks like and then say how to use it.
Sure.
This thing. This is
if
how
you're
you
hooking
use
to
it.
a hose faucet, use this. If you're hooking to an irrigation system, this is how it goes.
Yeah. There's a lot of things that I don't know about like pressure and flow and things like that. When it starts to get technical.
You could caveat. Say, I don't know anything about this. But...
I'm more of just like a try it and see if it works. And that's where I feel like my knowledge would get really dicey. So like I know how things work on our property, but other people might have like way too much pressure and then I wouldn't know how to fix that.
Okay.
You know,
I think still would be helpful.
Or people might have really low pressure, in which case I'd be like, I don't know, call somebody and get bigger pressure or more, like, you know what I mean?
Just get more pressure. No big deal.
Get more pressure. Yeah. Like,
yeah. Maybe I should read your bullet point list before you film it.
That's what I'm saying.
I do think it would be helpful.
Maybe.
I really do. Because I think largely people are dealing with a lot of the same things. Like largely an outdoor faucet will behave the same as the next person's outdoor faucet. Maybe. You know, for the most part.
Especially for people who just have normal homes. It's like a faucet on the side of the house.
Yeah. And
because I think there's like standards for how much, PSI they need to be.
Yeah. I think you're talking about the obscure examples.
Maybe.
That might.
But ours is kind of obscure.
A little bit.
Our situation, I mean, having a really, 100-year-old house and just weird stuff that's been there forever and things like that.
Jeannie said, why do you need a raised bed mix? What's the difference between that and the potting mix? In my opinion, all the different types of soil is netso, just a big old gimmick. It is crazy how much is out there. I do know just out of my personal experience, just as far as the Espoma products go, they do look and feel different. And I don't know if that would translate different in different containers, but like when you're filling a raised bed, you're filling a much larger space typically. When you're filling a container, you're filling a smaller space. And so I don't know if they make the potting soil like a little bit more nutrient dense than they do the raised bed mix, because when you're doing raised beds, you're usually adding in compost as well and probably some biotone. I do biotone and the land and sea soil conditioner in our beds, so they get that extra boost from that as well. So I don't know. I mean, we could run some experiments and see
Yeah.
if we use raised bed mix in a pot, if the plants would respond the same as they would with regular potting soil.
My personal belief is that you could use either one for either application and you probably wouldn't notice a difference.
Probably not. Probably not.
So to her point, she's probably like mostly correct.
And I wonder too, I don't know the retail price off the top of my head, but I wonder about the raised bed mix. I bet it's cheaper than the potting soil. And that's why
maybe.
I'm wondering, like, it's more cost effective for the larger spots. So maybe they, don't have as much nutrients in that to make it cheaper too. So that when you're filling a larger space,
Yeah.
I'm not really sure how that all
I don't know
works.
either.
Rachel said, wouldn't the water well in the aquapot be a place for mosquitoes to breed? I don't think so, because it's getting moved around a lot and it's way down in the pot.
How would the mosquitoes get up and...
Well, the
out
mosquitoes,
of
like,
it?
don't they lay eggs on the surface of water?
Yeah.
Like, they'd have to fly down the tube and get in there.
Yeah.
And then it needs to kind of be still, right? Like, moving water doesn't really bode well. So the water's constantly going to be churning down there, like water dripping,
Right.
So I don't think so. I think you would need more of like a surface level sort of pond situation, standing water somewhere
Yeah.
for that to happen. Not to say that it couldn't.
I'm not worried about that happening. I think we would know.
We had plenty of mosquitoes in our area without the addition of, 10 aquapot inserts or whatever we're
Yeah.
going to use out there, 20 of them. That's not going to create any more or less mosquitoes than we're going to deal with anyway.
I told Ken we were probably going to need like 30 to 40.
Oh, on our property?
Yeah.
Dang. Really?
I don't want to water no containers on the weekends.
Well, I guess not. And with that, you guys, that is the end of our recap video. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you have a really great week, and we will see you in the next one. Bye.